The God of War franchise has always been known for its legendary bosses, its epic scale and violent death, but it's also packed with great emotional, tragic and of course iconic moments. Today I bring you a ranking of the moments I found the most incredible and fascinating in the franchise. I really wanted to make that video because I'm going to look back at moments that touched me as a video game fan, and it seemed important to me to talk about the older God of War games for that reason. The abduction of Deimos. After defeating Ares, Kratos took his place as the new God of War, but still haunted by vision of his mortal past, he decided to go to Atlantis against the advice of Athena. Just before arriving in the city, the Kratos ship is destroyed by Scylla. The Spartan goes to the temple of Poseidon where he meets his mother, Callisto, whom he has not seen for years. She reveals to him that her brother Deimos is still alive, prisoner of the domain of death, and gives him instruction to save him. When she gets ready to reveal the identity of Kratos' father, she turns into a monster that her son is forced to kill. A series of flashbacks reveals that the Oracle predicted that the fall of Olympus will not be due to the Titans, but to a mortal, a Morg soldier. Zeus and Ares think that this warrior is Deimos, the younger brother of Kratos, who has a strange birthmark. Ares, with Athena at his side, interrupts the training of the true brothers and kidnaps Deimos. Kratos tries to stop him but is immediately defeated by the God of War, who inflicts a scar on the right eye. The young Spartan owes his survival only to Athena, who prevents Ares from killing him. Taken to the realm of death, Deimos is since imprisoned and tortured by Thanatos, the god of death. In tribute to his brother, Kratos will tattoo a red mark identical to the mark that Deimos had. This segment is so important in the character development of Kratos and to the story of the God of War games. I truly admire how the developers have brilliantly used the characteristical elements of Kratos' appearance to tell us some very deep story. I've always loved the fact that Kratos tells so much thing through his wounds and marks, such as the ashes of his wife and daughter, the burn marks from the blades of chaos, and of course the tattoo and scar on his right eye and abdomen. Something I like about the mark on his eye is that this same mark has been worn by the hand of the god who took everything from him. His life, his soul, his family. It's an element that I really appreciate, because you'd think that this famous mark on his right eye comes from one of the many conflicts he had with creature or gods, but on the contrary, he got it while trying to protect his brother from Ares and Athena. He got it when he was still an inexperienced warrior, unfit for combat with a god. It's the mark of a failure, the failure of not having been taken in his brother's place, because it wasn't Deimos who was to be kidnapped that day, it was Kratos. That's why I like this symbol of Kratos' past, a symbol of tragedy. One more to push him to destroy those evils and merciless gods. As for the famous tattoo, it's mentioned in a bonus video as a symbol of tribute to his brother who was captured that day. This moment in Ghost of Sparta perfectly captures what I would have expected from the tragic moment that prompted Kratos to honor his brother and mark himself with this iconic tattoo, who once again represent the tragedy of that dark moment. Kratos crosses the Pandora's temple. The story takes place when Kratos, sent by the goddess Athena to eliminate Ares, encounters an oracle who reveals that the only way he can defeat a god is to come into possession of Pandora's box, which is locked away at the bottom of a huge temple. The Titan Kronos has been condemned to carry the temple on his back in the desert of lost souls since the Great War. And this is when the long trail of the Pandora's temple begins. So why did I include it in this list? Simply because when I think of God of War 1 and its iconic moments, that long segment in the Pandora's temple comes straight to my mind. It really represents one of my favorite aspects of the God of War games, thanks to the excellent level design of this segment and the many progress that Kratos has accomplished. From the challenges of Hades and Poseidon to the famous whale, this zone is truly a maze, and this maze tells a story. The story of a man ready to do anything to get what he wants. A betrayed man ready to destroy everything in his path. I mentioned this moment in Kratos' story because it's really important for me to highlight this moment. Because despite the fact that it's more a segment than a moment in itself, it represents a series of iconic events in which Kratos, as he progresses on his journey, realizes what a monstrous and dangerous character is becoming in order to reach the top of this gigantic temple and open this cursed box. We spent the vast majority of the game in this temple, and I love the variation of zone and scenery that Pandora's temple allows you to explore. The first game of the series, it's a real masterpiece for the adventure of this segment and the feeling it gives me. I feel that this segment really deserved a place in the ranking because I attach a great importance to segments in video games, and sometimes the level design can really mark me to the point where at the end I'm really shocked by all the adventure I've just been through, the trials I faced, all the puzzles I've been able to solve. And this is something I felt in all the previous God of War games, even Ascension. And I even found that this game had excellent segments and a very pleasant and memorable level design. So let me know if you'd like a video of the segments of the God of War games. Kratos gets killed by Zeus. After defeating Ares, Kratos became the new God of War. Kratos had found a new family among the Spartan warriors. Supported by their new god, they were crushing more and more cities, but with each new city destroyed, the god's wrath grew. Ignoring Athena's complaints, Kratos prepared to deliver the final blow to Rhodes himself. But then a giant eagle, which Kratos initially mistook for Athena, drained the god of war of some of his power before transferring them to the Colossus of Rhodes. As he battles the huge statue, Kratos receives help from Zeus, who entrusts him with the sword of Olympus, which drains what left of Kratos' divine power. The ghost of Sparta managed to defeat the Colossus, but is gravely wounded in the process. It's at this point that the eagle reveals its true appearance. Zeus, the king of the gods, reveals that he has to intervene directly. He forces Kratos to submit to his authority. Zeus, enraged at Kratos' disobedience, takes the sword of Olympus and kills him before destroying the army. As the Spartan is taken to the underworld, he sees Gaia in his mind. She offers Kratos her help and tells him to find the Sisters of Fate, cancel his death and enable him to take revenge on Zeus. The beginning of God of War 2, one of the most legendary introductions of the God of War games, maybe even the best. I love this intro and the epic battle against the Colossus of Rhodes, where Kratos is unstable and enraged. Following this great battle, Zeus himself goes to the battlefield, destroys the entire Spartan army and decides to put an end to this affair. What an iconic moment. The Titan Gaia appears in a phenomenal scene and offers Kratos her help in defeating Olympus and Zeus. It's at this point that we understand that the God of War franchise is starting to take a new direction, with the introduction of the Great War of the Gods against the Titans and the legend of Zeus defeating his father. It's clear that the franchise keeps perpetuating the cycle of paternal conflict, with the use of Kratos who wishes to kill his father. This famous cycle, which Kratos has decided to finish in God of War 2018, had just begun in an incredible way in God of War 2 with the introduction of Gaia and her ambitions. I'd also like to add that this is my favorite Kratos death, because I didn't mention it earlier when I was talking about the Pandora's temple, but I appreciate the first death of Kratos when he tries to open the Pandora's box, but I found it a bit ridiculous. Why Ares miles away shooting him with a pillow, and Kratos who traveled all this way to die like that? It's a bit frustrating. I also didn't include Kratos opening Pandora's box because here we also have Kratos returning from the underworld and standing near Ares, who's just showing off during this time. It's an iconic moment in the franchise, but due to the ridiculous nature of this moment, I can't include it, but that doesn't stop me from loving this moment, and the opening of the Pandora's box remains legendary in the franchise. Kratos returns to Sparta, deciding to leave Atlantis, where Kratos failed to save his mother. He discovers that several Spartans have been brutally killed, and then meets their murderer, Erine, the daughter of Thanatos. After an epic battle, Kratos kills her and reaches the city of Sparta to continue his quest. And it's on this part that we are going to focus. I don't know how to describe you how unique and timeless this moment is in the God of War saga. What a pleasure it is to see Kratos visit his hometown, meet his people who appreciate and adore him. What an honor it is to see Kratos, now the new God of War, walking in the city of Sparta and interact with the people and the events of this place. I found it mind-blowing how much life this part of the game has. Seeing an animated city with NPC who don't represent enemies to be defeated, but just citizens who's not afraid of the ghost of Sparta. What a breath of fresh air it is. I don't know if you realize it, but this is the only God of War with this feeling. Even the Savalier don't have this incredible feeling. Here we are welcome, and there's absolutely nothing hostile about it. I love how this game attempts to involve us in Kratos' life. This segment reminds me a lot of the moment when Nate walks through the Tibetan village in Uncharted 2. I found that this moment in Sparta has the same mythical feeling. Kratos confronts Thanatos with his brother and loses him in the process. At the gates of the Domain of Death, Kratos is once again contacted by Athena, who tries one last time to dissuade Kratos. During the discussion, Kratos understands that she was present with Ares when his brother was kidnapped. He reiterates his desire to save Deimos and orders Athena not to interfere. He finally enters the Domain of Death and frees his brother. The poor one, however, is enraged that Kratos didn't free him earlier and attacks him. During the duel, Thanatos interrupts and takes Deimos to the peak of suicide. Thrown off the cliff by the god of death, Deimos is saved by Kratos, who offers him his spears and shield. The two brothers then challenge Thanatos, who realizes that the mocked soldier is actually Kratos. During the battle, Deimos is finally killed by the god of death, sending Kratos into an uncontrollable rage and literally destroy Thanatos. This final fight is one of my favorite of the franchise. This brotherhood and the tragedy of Kratos, who once again loses a person important for him, whom he has only just reunited with. It's a tragedy, and I absolutely love how Kratos responds, with the only feeling that the world gives him, the fury, one of the best rage moments of the franchise. It's insane how Kratos pierces the primordial god's heart, putting an end to this fierce battle, which reminds me of something concerning another important primordial being of the God of War games. After that, Kratos takes his brother's body back to the summit. There, he lays his brother's body to rest in the traditional Spartan manner, with spear and shield. Then Kratos faces his future with this ultimate disappointment. He'd like to let go once more, but Athena appears in person and is about to give Kratos some more divine power. But that's too much. Kratos won't let the gods ruin his life again. The final scene shows Kratos in his God of War armor with a look of hatred in his eyes. The element of Kratos' past revealed in this game only increased the empathy I feel for him. This game explores so many dimensions of his personality and regrets. Seeing Kratos reunited with his mother and brother, seeing how much he loves them and thinks of them, and how he'll do anything he can to protect them, shows just how important they are to him. Ghost of Sparta is a really great God of War game. I really recommend it to you if you haven't played it yet. Kratos pushes his daughter away. During the 10 years of service to the Olympian gods, Kratos is contacted by Athena, who reveals that Helios has disappeared and Morpheus has taken advantage of the disappearance of the sun to plunge many gods and mortals into a deep sleep. Before she too succumbs to Morpheus' spell, she gives Kratos the mission of fighting Helios and sending him back to the heavens. The Spartan then finds Helios' sister, Eos, who reveals that the Titan Atlas has been released from Tartarus and has kidnapped the sun god. She tells him that the fire of Helios will get him to the sun god, and Kratos uses it to awake the horses of Helios. They take the Spartan to the underworld, where he meets Charon on the river Styx. Although Charon defeats Kratos before sending him to Tartarus. Spartan then returns with the gauntlet of Zeus and defeats the ferryman. He continues through the underworld, where he sees Calliope in the flute before entering the palace. Pursuing her, Kratos meets Persephone, who offers to let him see his daughter again if he gives up his weapon and his mission. Accepting the offer, Kratos reunites with his daughter in the Elysium, but learns from Persephone that she is the one who freed Atlas, instructing him to kidnap Helios and use his power to destroy the Pillar of the World, which will bring about the end of Olympus. Motivated by the desire to take revenge on the gods who had betrayed her, Persephone also revealed to Kratos that destroying the pillar would cause the destruction of the Elysium and the definitive death of his daughter. So Kratos had a decision to make: stay with Calliope until the world was destroyed and his daughter gone, or stop Persephone and Atlas, which meant abandoning his daughter forever. In my opinion, this moment is absolutely brilliant and a genius idea from the developers. Here we are talking about one of the most greatest interactive moments in the history of God of War. We are all familiar with the use of the QuickTime event in the God of War franchise, and we all love them. The interactivity that the developers give us reinforces the epicness and the intensity of what's going on. But here, the use of the circle button in this segment is a genius idea. Kratos has just found his daughter, and more than anything else, he'd like to spend the eternity with her, to be able to take the opportunity to love her forever. But once again, this life will never allow him this happiness, so he has no choices but to push his daughter away and disappoint her yet again. It's a terrible moment. It's so hard for Kratos, and we feel it after all he's been through in this game. This segment is so awesome and powerful that I really wonder why people don't talk enough of this scene. I love the Nordic games, and I even prefer them to the old games in many aspects. But I can't stand that people saying that there's no emotion or power in the writing of the old God of War games. The staging and codes are different, of course, but with a scene like this one, you can really see the emotional power it possesses. And it is this kind of moment that makes me so passionate about the God of War franchise and video games in general. Kratos goes back in time and engages Gaia and her army against Zeus. After killing the Sisters of Fate, Kratos obtains his own Thread of Fate, enabling him to go back in time to the moment when Zeus betrayed and killed him. Just as Zeus has killed Kratos with the Sword of Olympus, Kratos, who has just defeated the Sisters of Fate, appears and steals the sword before challenging Zeus to a duel. While Zeus has the advantage, Kratos feigns to lay down the Sword of Olympus, surprising the King of Gods when he is the most vulnerable. Now at Kratos' mercy, Zeus is saved only by Athena, who is impaled by the sword, allowing the King of Gods to flee. With her last breath, Athena reveals to Kratos that Zeus is his father and that he was afraid that Kratos would overthrow his reign, just as he had ended the reign of Kronos. Angrier than ever, Kratos decided to finish him off and kill anyone who got in his way. Using his mastery in time, Kratos returns to the past, just before the Titans were defeated in the Great War. He then offers to take them back with him to the present to decimate the gods. Zeus, back on the Mount Olympus, to prepare his family to a war against Kratos. But the ghost of Sparta has already begun his assault on Olympus, reading on Gaia's back, and followed by the other Titans, who are climbing Mount Olympus with the intention of destroying the gods. I think we are talking about the best cliffhanger in the history of video games. In fact, I can't even imagine what an incredible feeling it must have been to finish God of War 2 in 27 and see that. Kratos has just gone back in time to the era of the Titanomachy with an army of titans ready to destroy Olympus in the reign of the gods. And above all, Kratos is even more pissed off than ever, ready to reduce Olympus to ashes. The craziest thing about this ending is that it doesn't cheese for nothing. The promises will be kept at 100%. God of War 3 will be the game that so many people have been waiting for, and the destruction is absolutely gigantic in this game. It's so powerful to see an ending that teases a total annihilation, and it's true, it will happen. I'd like to say as much about the end of God of War 2018, which teases the fight against Thor. The promises was kept concerning this fight, but not entirely the Ragnarok. But we can see that this ending is so striking that 2018 will repeat the epicness of this cliffhanger, with Thor showing up in a full Fimbulvetter, facing Kratos ready to take his revenge. Kratos sacrifices himself and gives hope to humanity. After the clash between Zeus and his son, Pandora lost his life in this confrontation of gods. After that, the ghost of Sparta returns to face his father, but their duel is interrupted by Gaia, who survived her fall and is determined to kill father and son, who continue the fight in the bowels of the Titans. Piercing the body of Zeus with the blades of Olympus, Kratos plants the heart of Gaia, causing her death. Believing to have killed Zeus at the same time, Kratos is surprised by the return of his father, who attacks him in his astral form. Deprived of his weapons and power, Kratos is imprisoned in his mind, condemned to relive his worst memories, until he is saved by a vision of Pandora that guides him to awaken hope, with which he managed to free himself and take the control over Zeus. Forcing him back into his body, Kratos will beat him to death, who release a column of lightning into the sky. Then, looking at an apocalyptic Greece ravaged by the chaos it has created, Kratos is finally challenged by Athena, who asks him to hand over what was in the Pandora's box. When Kratos reveals that it was empty, Athena refused to believe it, explaining that when Zeus sealed the evils of the world after the Great War, she placed hope there at the same time, having foreseen that it will one day be opened, but she realizes that he is in Kratos from the moment he opened it to defeat Ares. The evils having corrupted the gods at the same time, Athena asks Kratos to give her hope so that she may finally reign over Greece, but he refuses and prefers to kill himself with the blade of Olympus, giving hope to humans rather than Athena. The end of the old God of War franchise. I always liked the concept of hope. I like what resulted in this ending with the scene where Athena perceives hope in Kratos' eyes, the same hope she herself had placed in the box. I like the lucidity of Kratos, who refuses to give her this power. He knows that she will not make a good use of it, so he decided to pierce his belly with the blades of Olympus in order to give hope to all the humans still living in this world ravaged by the disorder that he has just provoked. By this act, Kratos redeems himself from all the damage that he has caused to this Greek world, even if it will not redeem all the unjust death that he caused in his journey against Olympus. But we can't deny that this noble act allowed the reconstruction of the Greek kingdom after his departure, as mentioned in the DLC of God of War Ragnarok by the words of the Norse god of war Tyr. I'm so happy that Santa Monica Studio has accepted the idea of hope, because it was what was missing in Kratos' life since the beginning. He said it himself in the first game, he has no more hope. When he was a god of war, his spirit was commanded only by violence and revenge. There was no possibility of a positive life for Kratos. With this end, we see that even if Kratos does not believe it himself, he kept hope until meeting Faye, who finally gave him a reason to leave. Kratos killed his wife and daughter. In the beginning, Kratos was a Spartan general with an insatiable desire for battles. He led his army to countless victories before being defeated by a barbarian king and his horde. Facing death, Kratos implores Ares, the god of war, to save his men and gave him the power to destroy his enemies. In exchange for which he agrees to serve him, Ares accepts and attaches the Blades of Chaos, a pair of blades forged deep in the Tartarus. To the arms of his new servant, Kratos, now equipped with blades, killed the barbarian king. Now in the service of Ares, he will spread war in his name, even attacking a village occupied by servants of Athena. Ares had secretly transported Kratos' wife and daughter to the village. During his attack on the village temple, Kratos accidentally kills them in a blind rage, while Ares had planned this slaughter so that Kratos would detach himself from his humanity and become the ultimate warrior. On the square of the fiery temple, the oracle of the village cursed the warrior by encrusting on his skin the ashes of his wife and daughter, leaving Kratos forever with a supernatural white on his skin. This is at that moment that Kratos received the nickname of the Ghost of Sparta. Since that night, Kratos is continually the prey of nightmares reminding him of his crimes and which make him gradually sink into madness. I decided to include these two events together because I wanted to free a place in the ranking and also because the first game of the franchise introduces the tragic past of Kratos as the story progresses, and the death of his wife and daughter is a direct consequence from the deal he made with Ares. I could not really include them separately as the link between the two moments is obvious and inseparable in the story of Kratos. This scene is just so iconic that it comes back perpetually in the franchise, and rightly so. It's the day that Kratos condemned himself. It's the day when his old life will take a turn that he never imagined. Just imagine being manipulated by a god who offered you his protection, command his troops, lead armies against his opponents, arrived in the house of a village enemy, and destroy everything in your path until you realize that you just killed the two beings who was the most important for you. Just imagine the intense sorrow that Kratos must have felt that day. The hatred he must have felt for having called the god of war to avoid dying. The hatred he must have felt for making that choice. Here we are on a tragedy worthy of guts from Berserk. Kratos already has no respect for the monster that he is at the time of God of War 1, so just imagine his consideration of himself after God of War 2, when he learns that he is himself a god. The wounds that Kratos suffered that day are so deep that it is palpable in God of War 2018. So much time has passed between God of War 1 and 2018, and yet the trauma of this event remains very strong and so deep in the character of Kratos, who is still in an eternal conflict with his own nature and the gods in general. How to describe you the emotion and the intensity of the wonderful scene where Kratos found his Blades of Chaos without all the iconic background that there is behind. The murder of his family represents the legend of the Ghost of Sparta, legend of the mortal who committed the most unforgettable sin, the legend of the man who destroyed Olympus. I can still speak for hours and hours of this event and its importance in the development of character of Kratos. Not to mention obviously the ashes, which represent one of the worst punishment that it is possible to suffer. It is impressive how the old games alone perfectly master the iconization of a character because of its memorable scene and visual of the games of the wonderful PS2 era. Kratos commits suicide. Kratos has finally accomplished his revenge. He just killed Ares. Kratos can claim his due from Athena. The gods forgive Kratos for his past mistakes, but do not allow him to forget his actions. Back in the present, Kratos, feeling betrayed and abandoned, tries to commit suicide by rushing from the highest cliff of Greece. My favorite moments of the old God of War games. The photography used when Kratos climbs the stairs, the exceptional iconization of this scene that figures us a destroyed Kratos ready to end his existence. First of all, I love the use of this moment because it is used at the beginning of the game and at the end, so that the developers left us all the history to understand why Kratos makes that choice. The explanation is absolutely heartbreaking because despite the betrayal he suffered from Ares, Kratos once again placed his trust in the hands of the gods who did nothing but betrayed him and use him to eliminate the god of war Ares. But now, how not to conclude with the most meaningful scene of the franchise, the scene that owes to God of War its name, and quite rightly. I consider these two moments as a sequence of events because it's the failure of Kratos' suicide that makes this scene so powerful, as the reward is surprising for Kratos, who did not even have the right to choose his destiny. The craziest thing about this ending is that the name of God of War has now two meanings at the end of the game. After making a deal with the God of War, Kratos killed him and became the new God of War. Kratos literally becomes it. We can see the evocation of wars to come in the world, simply because the world is under the command of a god full of grudge and hatred. And this is the beauty of this end, because history does not stop there. Kratos perpetrated the cycle of chaos and regretted. He was not satisfied by his revenge and decided to create a new life. He fled his past until Valhalla when Kratos challenged himself. He who made that choice that day. Wouldn't he deserve redemption? Yes, he deserves it, because he chose not to perpetrate this order of chaos. He decided to change for himself and for the others, to be better, which removes this insinuated chaos at the end of God of War 1, because Kratos has again become the God of War, but this time to use this power wisely to advocate peace and diplomacy, to fight because he has the power to protect those who cannot be defended. He finally realized that he is more than that. The God of War franchise in its globality is more than that. Video games. Create this video made me realize how much I admire the old God of War games and their ability to make great moments that are today marked in the history of video games, while enhancing in a great and unique way the new games of the God of War franchise. Just to look at this scene of God of War 2018 and the emotion that transmits to Kratos the vision of his past self that brutally destroys the face of Zeus. The new God of War games is the history of a legacy. The legacy of 6 incredible stories that forged and gave life to the character of Kratos, and that is why his redemption in 2018 and Ragnarok is so magic in my opinion. His choice to be a better person for him and for those he loves will be as powerful without all his murderous past. In my opinion, what Santa Monica Studio made for the character of Kratos is the best possible tribute to the Greek Kratos who suffered so much in his former life. Build a family, loving his son, having friends and people who loves him. The humanity he protects from the tyranny of Odin is the same people who now considers him as the god of hope. What better tribute can we give to the man who lost everyone that day? Is it not beautiful to have once again give the choice to this fallen god? The substance of these two games is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen in art, and I owe this to the Greek games. Not only the end of Ragnarok announced the game of 2018, but in addition to that he announced the character of Kratos and finally grants him his redemption. And I don't forget the magnificent conclusion that is the DLC Valhalla. All simply, I wanted to tell you that without this Ghost of Sparta, we will never add the excellent character development of Kratos in God of War 2018, that fights from the beginning to the end against his past, and that for me, considering how this game is important to me, it has no price. When this scene, or this scene, or this one is all lead to his past, I must pay tribute to all these games that created my passion for God of War 2018 that represent my favorite game ever and just a part of me. The beauty of God of War is that this franchise is timeless, despite the different styles of visuals and composition between the Greek and Nordic games. God of War is a unique franchise who keeps enhancing each game together, making it a convincing and satisfying set in the history of video games. And the end of Valhalla beautifully proved it to us.